5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Johnson is fouled and New York by 1. Better than most. How about in? That is better than most. Better than most. And it works out of the shotgun. He takes it. Facing pressure. He's in trouble. He's spun around. He's able to get away. Looks to throw. He does downfield. And a leaping catch is made down at the 25. What a play. David Tyree comes up with the ball. What a play by Eli Manning. Here is Brady Quinn looking. Pump fakes. He rolls to the near side. Throws it. It's caught by Samardzija. Inside the 20. Inside the 10. He's going in. Notre Dame has scored with 27 seconds left. Brady Quinn does it again.
You're listening to another edition of Sports Today with Peter J. Here's your host, Peter J. Mulroy.
All right, good to be back with you on this Friday, July 5th, a couple minutes north of 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And I'll tell you what, if you live out here in the Northeast, again, those listening live across all platforms, it is a black hole outside right now with the thunder and the lightning that just blew in, the windstorm. I'm watching it unfold before my very own eyes. It was forecast, but this one came quick. So if you hear that loud boom in the background, right, a day removed from 4th of July where it sounded like a war zone in my neighborhood, I don't mind it. But the 2-year-old might be struggling a little bit with it last night. She slept right through, and now you've got this monsoon out the window. It's a loud couple 2 days. So welcome after last week's brief hiatus. It's good to be back on the air. Want to make a note as well, and each and every week I promote the other show that I do with the affiliate out in South Bend, the Irish Tribune. Major moves there with some jockeying around of some of the on-air talent. So that show, that First and Gold show that we've been hosting each and every week, I'm now going to be hosting solo as some changes have been made there. They were actually kind enough and proud enough to elevate me there to one of their feature editors of the Irish Tribune. So that's nice. It's something I could fit in part-time. Most of it's remote, minimal travel. And the most important thing is it's not taking me away at all from my wife and daughter, which was the biggie. Neither does this show. Plenty to talk about in baseball today. We'll go across most of the league as we continue to creep closer and closer to the All-Star break, because there's so much jockeying for position here, specifically in that National League. And that is something that went unchanged from 2 weeks ago. But the heaviness at the top, specifically in that American League East, more on that in a couple of minutes, has changed. And that landscape does look different. But I want to start with football. And so many fans over the years have become accustomed to sitting down in front of their TVs, throwing on HBO and watching Hard Knocks. It's a big draw. It's hard not to get into it, whether you had the Jets, the Cowboys, the Rams, the Ravens, some of those big premier teams that have had their championship runs, or they've had some type of draw to them that would make them appealing to a national audience. Now, you can make the joke there. When the Jets were on Hard Knock, they had Rex Ryan, but they had the Jets. People like to poke fun at the Jets because it's so many the failures they've had over the years, right, wrong, or indifferent. That played a role with HBO. So here you have this new rollout that HBO has done in conjunction with their app HBO Max, Hard Knocks off-season. And the rollout this year is Hard Knocks and off-season with the New York Giants. Okay, great. Here's my argument with that. I have no problem with the New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll, which, by the way, if you've seen him recently, guy did a tremendous job in the weight loss department. Dude looks good. I mean, he was getting big. And that's a stressful job, but the man looks outstanding. He has for months, so kudos there to Coach Daboll. I'm a big Joe Shane guy. They were basically handed a soiled diaper and asked to turn it back into gold overnight, and they nearly pulled it off in year one, getting to the postseason. Now, you can make the argument they were so ahead of schedule that it set them back, maybe, after last season's 6-win campaign. But I would make the argument there in that 6-win campaign, there were 3 or 4 games on that schedule you should have won. The Jets and the Rams game, and probably that second Eagles game being one of them, being a couple of them, I should say. So there were opportunities there, but you didn't get to play up front. You didn't get to play from the quarterback position. You had your 2 big guns at the quarterback, Taylor and Jones, at some point out of the lineup. At one point after that Miami game, they were out of the lineup simultaneously in the same game. So now you go into the offseason, knowing that the Giants now year 3 with Shane and Dable, something's got to give here, right? You've had a taste of the postseason. You've had a dose of coming back down to reality. Now what does year 3 bring? Well, year 3 starts with a major decision in the running back department. What do you do with Saquon Barkley? And we know what the Giants ultimately did, electing not to ink Barkley to the big contract from a year's and a salary perspective. At 27 years old, yes, he has an injury history. Is he a difference maker when healthy? Absolutely. He's one of the premier difference makers. But as we saw in Hard Knocks, and I think there were a lot of good points, a lot of good moments in that opening episode, which debuted, I believe it was July 2nd. It's on HBO Max now. It's there forever. So if you missed it live, you can watch it on HBO Max. That's what I did yesterday, last night, as a matter of fact. The thing that had me chuckling with this episode of Hard Knocks, and I had a conversation with a buddy about this, I like Dable. I like Shane. I appreciate the direction. The problem I have with the New York Giants is its ownership and John Mara. So now you take this New York Giants front office, specifically the conductor of the train and John Mara. I know how incompetent he is, but now the whole world is going to see how incompetent this man is. That's the bugaboo you have there. You know, I think there's an immense group of talent on this New York Giants team. I don't think that's debatable. But to have that all come together, and now you add this layer of being on a national show, I know these guys are millionaires. It makes a difference. Trust me, they're aware. It makes a difference. It changes you a little bit. Now, are we going to see the intricacies of what happens day in and day out? Sure, you're seeing Shane Dable drop F-bombs, which you very rarely get to see because the networks bleep it out with the delay. So you get that human aspect of seeing them curse and have, behind the curtain, backroom conversations. But you're going to get a lot of vanilla there. And while I liked the show, and while I thought it gave good insight into the mindset of how the Giants approach the Saquon Barkley situation, I don't really know how much more you're going to get. What I do have an appreciation with in seeing episode 1 from a Joe Shane perspective was the groupthink. Sitting in the room with his AGM, president, senior VPs, how do we best handle this? Give me the available running backs, which every team does. They throw them up on a board. They give you stats. They give you age. They give you salary. And expected salary going into the offseason. There are a lot of good free agent running backs. Of that class, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, who before he signed with Green Bay was with the Raiders, were the 2 best. But the point that I thought really, and if Giant fans are thinking like I am, that sort of gave me a little bit of peace was Joe Shane basically saying, okay, we know what Saquon's going to demand. I don't know how much another team is going to pay him. It would be impossible to know that. But do we allocate that money to a position that the last couple of years historically has not been a go-to position? And you can look at teams like the Chiefs who've won Super Bowls with running back by committee. It happens. Are we going to allocate that amount of money when we have all of these needs? And when you sit back and you take a breath, and Joe Shane brought it up, specifically saying, Daniel makes a lot of money. And the Daniel he's referring to is obviously his quarterback, number 8, Daniel Jones, who he gave that contract to because he believes in him. I thought the other point was when Shane came out and said, effing Patrick Mahomes wouldn't be successful behind that offensive line. That's a fact. Were there moments when given time and the ability to operate with a clear mind where Daniel Jones had to be better and was not? Of course. But you can't look a rational person in the face and say that that New York Giant team last year was ineffective on the offensive side of the football solely because of the play of its quarterback. It's absurd. So it was nice to hear the guy who makes all systems go say that and mean it. Because if you watch Joe Shane in post-game pressers, post-mortem at the end of last season, the guy doesn't BS you. He's as advertised. And that's a breath of fresh air from the last one who would beat around the bush and never get to the point. And anytime something went wrong, it was never his fault. So while it's tough to lose a guy like Saquon Barkley from a productivity and a likability standpoint, you're going to give him what the Eagles gave him? No, absolutely not. When you had holes on that offensive line and you had massive needs defensively, you're going to tell me you give Saquon Barkley that money? Giants are able to go out and make that trade for Brian Burns, knowing at some point they're going to have to take a financial hit. You give Saquon Barkley that money. Do you bring John Runyon in as an offensive lineman starter? You bring Jermaine Illuminor in to start on that offensive line to support Andrew Thomas? No, because the funds wouldn't be there. So you would have an all-pro running back. That's great. But who in God's name is blocking for him? You've got a $40 million a year quarterback. Who in God's name is blocking for him? So while that Giants offensive line certainly to this point is not perfect, it is more than serviceable, at least on paper, with what they did going into this season. You won't convince me otherwise. Now, it could crash and burn. We've seen guys come in and just fall flat on their faces in any sport, any team. It happens. But the thought process, and this is something that I believed while they were doing it. At Hard Knocks, just to me, it might very well down the road, where I said, illuminate some of the deficiencies with this front office, specifically John Mara. And that's a fear of mine. Now the whole world is going to see why most of the Giant fan base despises this man and why his father, God rest his soul, is probably spinning in his grave. But as a caveat to that, you have a GM who knows what the hell he's doing and a head coach who is in lockstep with him. That's huge. Now you got to win. And look, if the Daniel Jones thing doesn't work out, the Giants can save face and get out of Dodge. Where Jones keeps money, they're out on the 4-year deal after 2 years, and we're good. And you move on. Does it set you back? Yeah. But can you get out and get a little bit of the egg off your face? Yes. Which is why I didn't think the Daniel Jones contract initially was a disaster. But again, it goes back to me perhaps being the get off my lawn guy or the I told you so guy. And it goes back to my background as a teacher. People don't read the fine print. When Daniel Jones got that contract, all anybody saw was the triple-digit million figure. You got to read. You got to read the fine print. It was a 4-year deal. If it backfires, you're out in 2. Fact. Not a disaster. Improved offensive line. Fact. Jones, still working on the knee, getting healthier. Fact. Won you a playoff game on the road 2 years ago. Fact. And while you might not have Saquon Barkley anymore, it is not like the running back they brought in is deficient. Devin Singletary is a damn good running back. And the organization knows him well from Shane and Dable's time with him in Buffalo, and he won the starting job in Houston a year ago. Things kicking in the right direction for this New York Giant team. I think Hard Knocks is going to be fun. And while I still have that wait and see attitude with some of the just potential idiocy that is going to come out of the mouth of John Mara, perhaps, we don't know. I think it's a 6-episode series. We're only 1 episode down. Might even be 5 episodes. I'm not 100% sure. I don't have it in front of me. But I think from the offseason that you've seen, with the Giants adding to the O-line, making the trade for Brian Burns, who gives you a phenomenal 1-2 punch coming off that edge with Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, that's what all the teams are going to game plan for, and the Giants finally have it again. When it was Tuck and OC and Strahan, or when it was just OC and Tuck when Strahan retired. That's what you're looking for here with Thibodeau coming off. What do you have, 14 and a half sacks a year ago? And Brian Burns probably was so happy to just get out of Carolina, and now he gets to come to the New York, New Jersey area. So I think there was a lot of good that came from this offseason. You bring in a legitimate backup quarterback in Drew Lock. You're able to do these things, folks, basically because of what Joe Shane said in episode 1. If we give a running back all that money, how else do we improve and fill the holes that we have? And when you're able to be realistic and approach it from a we, not me standpoint, the Giants are in good hands with this man. That is a fact. Now you got to go win games. But to be able to put pieces of a puzzle and collectively bring them together with thought is a big deal. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that tight end position with Darren Waller hanging it up. But that looks like it might be a win just from a PR headache standpoint for the Giants. This guy seems like he's a freaking nut job. So this might actually, as talented as he is, this might bode well for the Giants to just get rid of this clown show. And you know what you have in Daniel Bellinger. He's not going to light up the room, but he's not going to hurt you. So I thought it was a pretty interesting opening episode of Hard Knocks for the Giants. I did. I'm waiting for the rest of the country to see just how ridiculous John Mara can be. But I think you like the approach, and I think you like that open forum where you were able to see exactly what they were thinking with Saquon Barkley. And they did right by him. Hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you an opportunity to test free agency. Philly gave him the bag. He took it. Somebody offers you money. Kid's 27 years old. He's not just got a career to build. He's got a brand to build. So you're going to take the money and go. And he took the money and went to Philadelphia.
With you every week.
Sports Today with Peter J.
So didn't do the show last week. We're back on the air this week, and what a difference 14 days can make. And I'm specifically targeting professional baseball here. Yankees looked like they were an unstoppable force of nature 2 weeks ago. Now here we are, the day after 4th of July. Yankees just got swept by the Cincinnati Reds, where they couldn't hit their way out of the ocean if they were on the shore, and where the pitching just totally imploded. They've dipped 20 games now 19 games above 500. We're at the high water mark of the season, I believe, was 28 or 29. And now they're 2 games back of the Baltimore Orioles. Now, 2 weeks ago, when you could kind of see there was a bit of a swoon with this Yankee team, you get the highs and lows. Look, it's a 162-game season, right? A lot can go wrong. A lot can go really, really well. You got to ride the waves. But now the Yankees have completely just got in the car and started driving in reverse. 3 consecutive losses, 2-8 across their last 10, 54-35. Yeah, they've got the wild card spot, 6 games on the loss side. Look, they're a playoff team, barring what would be an unbelievably unconscionable collapse. And I've said it since the beginning of the season. I thought this was Baltimore's division again. Not that I don't think this Yankee team is a good team. And if you listen to New York sports radio, which is just taking a nosedive. Yeah, Brian, you get comments from one of the stations a couple of weeks ago. Brian Cashman didn't build a good enough team, which is just an absurd thing to say because you can't buy everybody. And you have to groom your own if you approach it from a logical standpoint. They're in a really, really bad patch right now. And the problem with that is you've got the Red Sox in town for 3 who are playing magnificent baseball. 47-39, 5.5 shy of the Yankees in the AL East and the wild card. And they've won 4 straight, 7 out of their last 10. You get them in the Bronx tonight. And when you take a look at what this Boston team has done, not a lot pops out at you. But you look at what makes this team go, and it's two guys, Rafael Devers and Jarren Duran. And Jarren Duran has really developed. He leads the team in hits. He's already over 100, and we're not even at the All-Star break yet. This is a kid who has really come on. You saw the flashes of it last year with the good speed, hitting for average. Here he is again. Now he leads the team in hits. But this offense goes as Rafael Devers goes. 288 batting average, 18 dingers, 51 driven in, an OPB of 375. You've got a good, young, talented center fielder in Ceddanne Rafaela, whose batting average has dipped throughout the season. But the Red Sox are doing this the right way. They're doing it with their own. You bring in veterans like Tyler O'Neill, Wilyer Abreu, the good young right fielder, the rookie, at one point was leading all rookies in hits. And when you parlay that with what they've gotten from a rotation that was a big question mark going into the year, Brian Bello, 8 wins. Tanner Houck leads the team with a sub-2.7 ERA. Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin have done a nice job at the back end of that bullpen. This is a team that is hot at the right time. And heading into that All-Star break, July 16th, so we're 10 days away from the Derby and from the All-Star game. Boston is one of those teams. If you can put up some stats and put up some W's against this Yankee team this weekend in the Bronx, you're going places. And then when you look on the other side of this 3-game set this weekend in the Bronx, Yankees need to get back on track. And they're going to, and it goes without saying, that you have to lean in the pitching department in that rotation on Garrett Cole. It's a no-brainer. But you're going to need more consistency from the guy who's going tonight in Nestor Cortez. Okay? Has he been bad? No. But the inconsistency drives you nuts. And this is the perfect opportunity. Now, I haven't turned around. There's no rain in the Bronx, which is amazing because it is black out my window right now with some of the weather that just blew in here in New York City. So the Yankees and Sox are underway. This is a perfect opportunity for Nestor Cortez to right the ship on his own self and then help this team get back to their winning ways. The hot start helps you when you go through swoons like this. But now you're going through that rough patch and you get your biggest rival who is red hot coming into your stadium. You've got to make something happen. And while it's leaning on a Garrett Cole, I'll tell you this, and this is not me reinventing the wheel or saying anything that you don't know if you're a follower of baseball and the Yankees specifically. They have to get more production from that catcher position. I know a lot of people like Trevino. I think Austin Wells is going to be a player. Man, is it slow developing this year, and it is tough to watch. Alex Verdugo's had a nice year, and you see when he's swinging a good bat, how dangerous he could be. Had a couple of big hits yesterday against Cincinnati. If they can get him going more consistency, that's a big deal. Obviously, Judge and Soto have to shoulder the load, and you have to be able to somehow, whether it's giving him a day off like they did a week ago, moving him to leadoff, hitting him second, hitting him fourth, they've hit him sixth. I'm talking about Gleyber Torres. You can't get 0 from your starting second baseman. Anthony Volpe's had a nice year as well at short, but you cannot get a 0 from second base. Now add into that the fact that Giancarlo Stanton, who has had a nice campaign, is going to be out at least a month. And this has been a tough past month for the Yankees. And you look at the last 3 games, specifically the last 3 outings individually for Luis Gil, who was not only the Rookie of the Year favorite, but the Cy Young favorite in the AL. ERA north of 14 across his last 3 appearances. And then look at the Cincinnati series. Stroman, Gil, and Rodon simply not good. And Rodon looks off again, which is going to be frustrating moving forward. The break is going to come at the perfect time for this Yankee team. Just like it will for a Seattle team who now all of a sudden has Houston breathing down its neck. Remember how bad Houston was in the beginning of the season? All of a sudden, snap your fingers, 8-2 in the last 10. They're 45-42, 2 games out of the West lead. How quickly things can change. But I mean, the recipe for the Yankees here is you got to get healthy and you have to get productivity from your big guns. I mean, it sounds like I'm taking the easy way out in talking about this. There's really no way to fine tune this. That's what has to happen. You don't have Anthony Rizzo. You bring up Ben Rice. Okay, that's fine. There's rumors around on the trade deadline coming out of the break and going into August. Paul Goldschmidt, you don't know what's going to happen there with the veteran. Would St. Louis potentially be interested with parting with him? But in the National League, St. Louis is still very much in play. You don't know. You're going to hitch your cards to a guy who's 34 years old on a downturn. Well, I think nice fit. Unrealistic. I don't think too much is going to change with this Yankee team going into and then coming out of this trade deadline. But getting your guys healthy, getting Stanton healthy, and keeping him healthy, potentially getting a better version of Anthony Rizzo back, who hasn't been the same since that concussion. Consistency from a DJ LeMahieu. And way more consistency behind that plate. Be it Trevino, Wells, whoever. Because it's been a problem. And it's been a highly talked about problem that you're a baseball fan, you notice those things. You look at this Yankee team offensively. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, 146 RBIs driven in. Stanton, 18 and 45 before he went on the shelf. Those are your big three guns. And now you don't have Stanton for a month. You got Verdugo's batting averages dipped below 250. Anthony Volpe's having another uptick again, which is big, and he's a base stealer as well. You've got to get more from Gleyber Torres. And you're going to have to get more from the combination of Jose Trevino and Austin Wells. Now, Trent Grisham's a nice player, thrust into more action here. I get it. But this is the team. This is what they have moving forward. Will they be buyers at the deadline? Of course they will be. Could they use some additional help in the rotation? Probably. Definitely on the back end. Luke Weaver's been a nice story. I know Clay Holmes is shaky. You don't have Ian Hamilton. You take a hit there too. On a bullpen that has been a strength of this team the last couple of years. Be a bit shaky. And I get it. Clay Holmes with the 19 saves. Weaver does a nice job to come in and take the lead there and hand the keys over to Holmes. But if you're thinking big picture, right now, not cutting it. And I don't think that's being irrational. I think that's being quite the opposite. I think that's being fair. For as well as this team has played, I mean, now you're starting to go through instances, and for as much as I like Trent Grisham, and he's a good ball player, you've seen a couple of instances with this team during this recent downturn of just sheer laziness. Laziness defensively. Laziness running the base path. Aaron Boone's had to address it a couple times, most recently with Grisham, but he's done it with Gleyber Torres. That gets frustrating. And that doesn't breed positivity. So add in all of these slumps that all these teams go through, and then you have to deal with that BS. So you've got a perfect opportunity here against your biggest rival who's coming in hot. You've got a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the Bronx. Take care of business. These are not unwinnable games. End to no score in the Bronx with the first of 3 against the Yankees and Red Sox for those listening live right now. And again, you talk about this Boston team coming in hot. By the way, all season long, they are one of the better road teams across all of Major League Baseball. So that adds another layer to it. You look around the rest of the league here, and you take a look at the standings. From a consistency standpoint, I think the race that we're going to be the most interested in is yes now, but even when we get into the second half of the season, like I've been saying for a couple of weeks, is going to be that NL wildcard race. But if you look across, starting in the American League first, right now you get Baltimore 2-game lead over the Yankees in the AL East, 55-32. They're playing good ball. They're doing what they need to do. Their home road splits are very good. They're one of the more consistent teams in all of baseball. Cleveland is legitimate. And I said that sort of in my teaser blurb promoting the show, that Cleveland, and then if you go out into the National League, Milwaukee, they continue to play really under the radar baseball. Milwaukee's got a 6-game lead in the NL Central. Cleveland has a 6-game lead in the AL Central. And they're holding off a Twins team that continues to win and a Kansas City Royals team in that AL Central that simply will not go away. So I think while the NL wildcard race is going to be fun to monitor throughout the rest of the season, so is the AL Central. Because things can change. We know how this goes. 6-game lead for Cleveland, whatever it might be going into next week's break or the break in 10 days for the All-Star game is nice. Maybe it increases, maybe it shrinks a little bit. Anything can happen because you still have 80-plus games left when you come out of that break. And then you look at the AL West, and those of you who follow the program will go back to last season with me, where the last month of the MLB season, the focus of the show was what was happening in the AL West, right? Because jockeying for position to win the division were Seattle, Houston, and Texas. And at the end of the day, it was ultimately Houston and Texas that got into the playoffs. Seattle missed by, I think, if memory serves me correct, a game. And then what happened? Texas went on to win the first World Series title in franchise history. This Houston team was as bad as you could be in the beginning of the season. And there are parallels to make there between the Astros and the New York Mets, who had horrific starts. I mean, nothing to be excited about. Now you look at the Astros, 45-42, 2 games back of the 48-41 Mariners. And they've really turned it up. A bad home team to begin the season, Houston. Now they're 5 games north of 500 at home. You win at home, good things happen. And their run differential has greatly improved from where they were 3, 6, 9 weeks into the season. Speaking of the Mets, you look in the NL East, that's unattainable with the Mets as we sit here right now for those listening live on Friday, July 5th, 14 games out. But 6-4 in the last 10, the Mets 1 game below 500, very much alive in this wild card race. Philly's got a 9-game lead over Atlanta. I would never sell the Braves short in being able to make up that deficit. But this is a Philly team that's proven it knows not only how to win in the postseason, but now win the meaningful games in the regular season. And they've done that, and they've done it all season. I mean, this Philly team, whether it's Harper, and you know all the names, Castellanos having a great season once again. Power numbers are there. Alex Boehm's driven in 70 runs already. Harper getting on almost 4 at a 400 clip, his on-base percentage, batting over 300. Bryson Stott's a good young second baseman. He's been in a bit of a downturn as of late. I know that because I have him on my fantasy team. But from top to bottom, this is a complete Philly team. And where they really make their hay is in the pitching department, whether it's Wheeler, Nola. Suarez has had a remarkable campaign to this point in the season. Well, at 2.27 ERA, 10-2 overall, and 103 innings pitched. Chris Sanchez has given him high-quality innings this season. Taijuan Walker, in his 10 starts, has given him good stuff as well. And then you get to the back end with Alvarado and Hoffman. This Philly team is the best in the National League right now, and I don't see much changing there moving forward. But as far as the wild card situation is concerned, a team like the Mets have a nice opportunity here coming out of the All-Star break to really solidify themselves. And you look at where we stand now with this National League. You've got Atlanta at the top and a surprising San Diego team holding true with the top 2 wild card spots. Now, if the season ended today, St. Louis is in. That's why I was hesitant when you bring up a name like Paul Goldschmidt or even a Nolan Arenado. I don't know if St. Louis is going to be very willing to move on from these guys if they think they have a legitimate shot at this thing. And if the season ended right now, they would be in the playoffs. Conventional wisdom asks, why the hell would you move guys if you had a shot at glory? I don't think they will. It's a consistent organization. Everyone knows that. They have their heads out of there, you know what. We'll see what happens. But then on their heels, 2.5 back, last season's NL champs, the Diamondbacks, and the Mets. The Giants are 3 out. After the sweep of the Yankees, the Reds now find themselves back in this mix at 3.5. And the Pittsburgh Pirates with the Washington Nationals are 4 and 4.5 games out of this thing, respectively. So this is going to be a hell of a lot of fun watching this in the second half of this MLB season, because this wild card race in the National League, there's not a lot of flair there. Sure, people are going to want to watch Pittsburgh for Skeens. They want to see him throw the heat. You've looked at what the Cincinnati teams with Jonathan India playing well, Ellie running all over the place. He's an absolute draw. He's must-see TV. Then you got a veteran-led team with some good young pieces like the Giants, and this Met team. This Met team that weeks ago gave you no reason to be excited. None whatsoever. But here they are again. They don't do much for you in the batting average category. I think Starling Marte is hitting south of 280, and he leads the team in batting average. But you've got Pete Alonso, 18 dingers, driven in almost 50 runs. Brandon Nimmo has put together a much better stretch as of late. Yeah, Jeff McNeil has been a killer for this Met team. He has. But Starling Marte's had a bit of a renaissance. Harrison Bader has been the Energizer Bunny for this team. And what a difference J.D. Martinez has made to this Mets lineup since they called him up after a slow start to the beginning of the season. Plus Mark Vientos. Kid can hit. Kid can really hit. Now, I know the last 2 games, dropping those, it's going to ruffle some feathers. But when you look at, and you get a 4-game split with the Nationals, Mets take the first 2, drop the last 2. That's a Washington team that can't be dismissed either. And good young pitching. Yeah, C.J. Abrams, a good young shortstop, is having a damn good year. So this is a Washington team where I think the future looks really good. You know, I don't think the future for the Mets is as murky as many people think. But bottom line is, as we sit here July 5th, Mets are in this thing. And that really wasn't the case a month ago. You could even say 2-3 weeks ago. But they've come to life. They've stayed somewhat consistent, and now they'll have an opportunity here going up against another borderline playoff team on the road in Pittsburgh. It's Severino and Skeens tonight, that game underway. This is a biggie, and the Mets are out through 3.5, up 2-0. So it's a good start to this 4-game set for the Mets against one of the really, really electrifying young pitchers in Paul Skeens. So you go 4 Pittsburgh, 3 at home with Washington, 3 at home with Colorado, and then you get the All-Star break. So you've got some opportunity because Pittsburgh and Washington are very much in the mix as a postseason contender in the win-loss department, at least where the standings are now, and then you get an awful Colorado team before the break. And if you want to be legitimate, you got to hammer this Colorado team because they are bad. They've got some good young pieces. Brenton Doyle's a nice piece. 30 and 57. They are at the cellar of the NL West. They're horrible. So the Mets will have an opportunity to take care of some business there. And that's pretty much where we stand at this point in this MLB season. Nationals right now have a 4-0 lead on St. Louis. And the weather that I'm looking at out my window has made its way to the Bronx game 1 between the Yankees and the Red Sox, now in a rain delay, bottom third, no score. Just quickly before we get out of here, looking around what's been taking place across the world of sports. Wimbledon underway. You've got some really interesting matches. The Alcaraz-Tiafoe match earlier went 5 between 2 really good friends. Alcaraz is one of the favorites on the men's side to win the whole damn thing. You've got some good young American talent in this pool as well, especially on the ladies' side. So Wimbledon is something that we'll absolutely be keeping an eye on as the program continues, whether it be next Friday, I'm not sure yet, or at least the Friday after. In NBA news, with all the changes in free agency and trades taking place, Klay Thompson put a really nice farewell post up to the Golden State Warriors. 13 years with the franchise, multiple titles, called it the best times of his life. I mean, he's a Golden State Warrior legend. And now he's going to be playing after signing a 3-year, $50 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks. So he stays out west, winning 4 NBA titles with Golden State. So Klay Thompson at the age of 34, after 13 seasons with the Golden State Warriors, going to the Dallas Mavericks. And you think about, what he means and what Steph Curry, I know he ruffles feathers, Draymond Green, to that organization and sort of taking that franchise and completely elevating them beyond anything they had ever done in the past. It was special. It was really special. As far as golf is concerned, you've got the John Deere Classic taking place this week. Usually a fairly interesting tournament, and you got a log jam in that top 5 with some of the Americans that are competing. C.T. Penn, who's a nice player, having a pretty good season as well, is tied for the lead after 2 rounds, I should say, at minus 14. It's not the biggest field in the world, but it doesn't mean that it lacks talent and a draw. And as we, continue to move closer and closer later in this season, when we get more into the FedEx stuff, this John Deere Classic, which is being played out in Illinois, this is a fun one. Aaron Rye is a nice young player. Harry Hall, the Brits up there, Eric Cole, Davis Thompson, Denny McCarthy, a trio of Americans who are in contention heading into the weekend. A couple of names people may know that are out on the course: Lucas Glover, former U.S. Open champion; Brendan Todd as well; Jonathan Vegas and Zach Johnson. Zach Johnson at minus 10 in contention as well as we head into the weekend. Just 4 shots off the lead out there in Silvis, Illinois. So obviously, you know how to subscribe by now. Plenty to discuss moving forward as far as MLB is concerned. Keep your eye on this Hard Knock stuff. I'm telling you, it's gonna get interesting. There's a big contingent of the Giant fans, myself included, who are not exactly in love with John Mara. You're pretty restrained. Episode 1. Moving forward, will we see the overall incompetence that Giant fans have unfortunately become accustomed to the last couple of years? Who knows? But I'll tell you this, and I said it at the top of the broadcast, and I'll leave you with this and on into enjoying the weekend. This New York Giants team, under the direction of Brian Dable and Joe Shane, as long as the powers that be don't go in there effing it up, are in good hands. And the proof has been in the pudding. We'll learn a lot more, as much as we can, with what the franchises and the cameras will allow on HBO's Hard Knocks as the show continues. And then it's going to come down to wins and losses. That being said, have a great weekend, folks. Thanks as always for tuning in. You know how to subscribe across all platforms by now. Hope to talk to you next week, maybe taking another break depending on scheduling. Taking my daughter to her first Yankee game tomorrow afternoon. Yankees Red Sox 105. Should be a good one. She's pumped up, got all the Yankee gear, and she's ready to roll. And with that, have a hell of a weekend. And as always, go Irish.
Listen to Sports Today with Peter J. every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. We'll see you there.